Welcome to the BOGART Effect, a wealthy wisdom podcast. The following BOGART Effect podcast is intended for general information purposes only. The information discussed is no substitute for personalized investment advice from BOGART or another investment professional. Please see important disclosure information at the end of the presentation. Good morning. Welcome to the BOGART Effect. Today I have Jung with me, and we're going to be talking about one of our favorite topics, budgeting for the holidays. So thanks for joining, Jung.
Thanks for having me.
This is our first podcast in our new office space. We're actually ad hoc right now. So
happy to be here. So nice. Congratulations, James.
Thank you. We'll have news content. We actually have a studio that's in the process of being built out. So this is going to be fun.
It is, absolutely.
So budgeting for the holidays. You know, this is one of those areas that no matter what you set up at the beginning of the year, you get into the holidays and then the new toy comes and next thing you know, it's far above budgeting,
right,
or whatever we budgeted for the year. So, you know, we find a lot of clients don't necessarily get into the granularity of this with us, but at the same time too, it's one of those reminders that's just so important for all of us as we go into the end of the year here. How to be mindful, what we're spending, why we're spending, in different ways of not necessarily having to spend money, but maybe other types of gifting that we can do, right? So talk to me a little bit about like, what is a budget? And let's get into ways of creating it that can be impactful.
Right. Well, thank you, James. I think this is a really important time of the year to just take a step back and remind ourselves that we have a budget in place, right? So we have a fixed amount that we have coming in, and we have to remind ourselves that we have a certain amount of expenses that we have going out. And I know that the holidays are coming and we have, you know, presents that we want to buy for our loved ones, but we want to keep a budget in place for the holidays. So if there is a certain amount that you want to buy for your loved ones, create a budget for that. And, you know, the holidays is right around the corner, but if you can create a budget as early as you can in the year and make that budget a fixed dollar amount, and you create that budget and you set a dollar amount each month for that budget, you know, so that you're constantly saving that for the year, then that's fantastic. But if you know, most of us, we have paychecks coming in, that's a fixed amount. And if you have a certain amount coming in, maybe in the later in the year, and but you're counting on bonuses, then plan for that as well. What you want to do is plan. You want to have a plan in place, and you want to have a fixed dollar amount that you can put in that budget.
What I find is throughout the year, it's very lumpy, right? Like I've got stuff that comes in at the beginning of the year, stuff, you know, around the summer times when the kids are out of school. And then of course, the end of the year, just kind of the mad dash. You know, what I think, and one thing I wanted to pull on that thread a little bit, I think it's important that if you're married, you have to have alignment between the spouses, because a lot of times you have one of the two that's a little bit more financially dominant than the other. And let's just say in my case, it's probably arguably me. I think it's a little occupational hazard, right? But you know, it's always a little bit of friction, right? Because there isn't complete visibility on everything going on. And then if you're not having a very deliberate conversation around what are you spending, how is it relative to budget throughout the year, then all of a sudden when the lumpy things come in, it starts to become a little bit more of a surprise. I find our ages, it's very hard because everything's chipping away at the same bucket of money. And so it's, whether it's, you know, childcare costs or food or travel or goodness knows what, right? But at the end of the day, having that budget that you can lean back on, and I believe within each budget, you should have a little bit of a, let's just say slush fund, you know, wiggle room that for the unknowns, because there's always unknowns. But as best we can, feed that up so that you can have a little bit of cushion coming into the end of the year for things like this. But I would emphasize also making sure that you have alignment, because at least if I'll speak to my household, but I don't necessarily have a conversation about, in previous years, I haven't had a conversation around what are we going to be doing for the kids? What are we doing for other loved ones? Instead, it's normally like, all right, well, the credit card's just higher this month, right? I'd like to avoid that conversation. Yeah. My wife jokingly knows that there's 12 days of the year that she really wants to stay away from me. I'm joking. Yeah. It's actually really 4 quarterly estimated payment days. But regardless, the point is that I think it's important for alignment and accountability associated with that.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Communication is key, right? So, whether it's you're planning to, have this budget in place at the beginning of the year, or later on in the year, you want to make sure that you have an agreement on who gets what gift and how much money is allotted for each person. You want to make sure that, everybody gets you agree that everybody gets the same amount, or that somebody gets a present at all. Mm-hmm. So transparency is key, communication is key, and, somewhere along the line, you may have a disagreement with one person, and you want to make sure that, you guys have that communication all along throughout the year, that you guys are on the same page.
And just while we're at it, right? Because I think all of these decisions have consequences, mm-hmm. right? So when I think about the budget in a general sense, again, everything is chipping away at the same dollars. You need to save for retirement. You need to save for education. You need to save for houses, cars. Right. And then you got to live, right? And so this whole conversation around budgeting for the holidays, it's one where, well, we could have had a great year and then all of a sudden blown it in the last couple months. And so I like to emphasize the point of consequences for our actions, mm-hmm. right? And that's not always a bad thing, right? Some of it might be just we're sacrificing some of what we would be saving mm-hmm. for retirement, for mm-hmm. example, because we want to do something nice for mm-hmm. Someone else as a gift, right? Mm-hmm. Just understand that, because that all directly correlates back into the budget.
Right, exactly. And when you have that budget in place, I think it's also important to note that you don't want to get emotionally carried away. You want to have that budget in place. We're planners, right? So when we're planning with clients, we try to take the emotion out of it, because we are planning for multiple goals. We're planning for education. We're planning for their retirement. We're planning for their emergency. We're planning for travels, lots of different buckets, lots of different goals. And gifting is, whether it's holiday, whether it's their birthdays, other celebrations, other milestones, it's just another part of their goals. And holidays, it can become very emotional. Mm-hmm. And so one of the items that I always like to keep in mind, and I always try to relay to my clients, is when it comes to gifting, try to always keep in mind that you don't always have to gift to get that appreciation back in return. Because if they're gifting to you, then they're gifting out of their heart. They're not expecting anything in return. That goes for everybody. Yep. If I'm gifting to you, then it's because I really want to gift to you, and I want to show my appreciation for whatever reason, and I'm not expecting anything in return. So don't feel obligated to gift to someone just because they did something for you.
Amen. I couldn't agree more.
So, just the opposite, if someone made you angry, then you may not want to gift to them. If they did something extraordinary for you, don't feel obligated that you have to go that extra mile or spend that extra dollar for them.
Well, and related to what you just said, mm-hmm. right? I think it's important. It doesn't always have to be a monetary gift.
Exactly.
Right. So, and this is where at the end of the year, philanthropy and altruism are a very mm-hmm. big part of, for example, our family and our core values. And a lot of what we're doing is giving time. We're giving to different organizations that really need the experience. They need the intellect. They need the actual physical help. For example, with building backpacks for young children or whatever it is. And part of it is, I think of these experiences as great opportunities to bring our children into, more of an altruistic mindset. Right. Because we still live in an area that is all in all very blessed. And I think, there's a lot of people who do need, just because it's the holidays doesn't mean you have to write checks. Very easily can be using a different form of currency. Time, emotion, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, my wife always says, we were talking this before the prep for this, but it's like, what do you get somebody who really can more or less, they have what they need? It's all about, for me, I look at the best gifts I've gotten are ones that have had a lot of thought put into them, and by and large are not expensive, right? Like, I think people lose track of that form of currency, the emotional side of this. And I love time and experiences, right? So, like, and I recognize, like, we all have other things that we could be doing, but when we're in one place, dedicated, committed, they're present for each other, I think that's the best ultimate gifts. And it does correlate right back into this budgeting for the holidays, right?
Absolutely. Some of the most thoughtful gifts that I've received are, the ones that were made by hand, or the ones that were, given with some forms of memories involved. I went around to our associates and I asked them, for some of their ideas on some forms of gifts that they've given in the past that didn't require a lot of money. And they had some really, really good ideas. So some of them were babysitting.
I like that one.
Canvas of photos. I thought that was a really good idea. Love coupons. Words of affirmations. Fragrance bouquets. Fragrances from their own gardens. Make dinner. That one could be a disaster, but I think that's a really cute idea. Paint, pick flowers from the gardens, and baking goods.
I love it.
So I think those all make fantastic ideas, create memories, and they all don't require a lot of money. Well,
and interesting you say that. Like, the best gifts my wife has given me is these calendar books. So anybody who's been in my offices can see these calendars that she builds for me. Every month, it's the pictures from a year prior. I know they're not expensive because I've seen them cost, right? But the point is that it's something that I look forward to flipping the calendar. Like, sometimes actually people will come in and flip it so they can see the pictures. But it's a lower cost gift that ultimately is great. But I think, kind of tying this back to the thesis of this podcast, really, it comes down to you need to have a budget.
Right.
I'm going to say you need to have a budget in a more macro sense, but especially around the holidays. And this is the time where I think it's more important to maintain that discipline. The decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis do have consequences on other goals and objectives. And I do think that when we talk about budgeting in a greater sense, we want to make sure that we're directly correlating it back to what are we trying to accomplish longer term, remembering those longer term goals, that some of the decisions that we make shorter term can have direct implications or consequences on those.
Exactly. And I know that we are, talking about budgeting around the holidays, but I think it's also good practice to put in, saving for not just now, but for the future as well. We're still in the era of inflated prices, and even with the Feds having recently lowered the rates by 50 basis points, I think higher prices are here to stay.
Oh, there's no doubt. Prices are not, they might not rise as faster, but where they are is by and large going to stay where they are.
And I think consumers will be surprised, if they go out and start putting all these gifts on credit cards, but come January, I think they're still going to be surprised to see how high the credit card rates are still.
Oh, I think we're starting to see that trend happening. I know this is not directly correlated to this, but I think a lot of Americans have been back to accumulating credit card debt, and those rates are just significantly higher than where they used to be. And because of that, I think we're going to start to see that having a longer term impact on spending.
Yeah, exactly. So the more that people can, be cautious and be disciplined with their holiday spending, I think the better.
Amen. Thank you, Jung. This was a great podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
The previous presentation by Bogart Wealth was intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the presentation serves as the receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice from Bogart Wealth or any other investment professional of your choosing. Different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk, and it should not be assumed that future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy or any other non-investment related or planning services, discussion, or content will be profitable. be suitable for your portfolio or individual situation or prove successful. Neither Bogart Wealth's investment advisor registration status nor any amount of prior experience or success should be construed that a certain level of results or satisfaction will be achieved if Bogart Wealth is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. Bogart Wealth is neither a law firm nor accounting firm, and no portion of its services shall be construed as legal or accounting advice. No portion of the podcast content should be construed by a client or prospective client as a guarantee that he or she will experience a certain level of results if Bogart Wealth is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. Copies of Bogart Wealth's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or at www.bogartwealth.com.